today's Islandora webinar. It's called Get Discovered, and it will be discussing some sitemap functionality, OAI PMH, and a few other functions. So if you were hoping to find out a bit more about American Idol or Tyra Banks' America's Next Top Model, you're out of luck. When I say getting discovered, I'm talking about making our digital assets, making sure they're exposed online for discovery and reuse. So this presentation, the content will take about 30 minutes, and there will be time for questions afterward. We have people joining us live and also a number of people who are going to experience this as a webinar recording after the fact. And for those of you who are listening live, if you do want to ask questions, there's a chat window that you can type questions into and send to me or to the whole group. Chat window is available at the top of your site. You can expand the WebEx menu and click on the chat button to that option. Presentation, it's going to go over the use cases for discovery for exposing our Islandora digital assets. And we're going to talk about the Islandora sitemap module, a tool for creating meta tags in the Islandora Scholar suite of modules. So that works towards search engine optimization or SEO. I'm going to go over the Islandora OAI module so that we can expose our Islandora repository assets through that protocol. So I talked to clients about discovery. They say it really does relate directly to their bottom line. When the repository objects are discovered, it asserts the value of the archiving and preservation work that they do. And if no one sees or reuses the digital assets, the program could be perceived to have a low value and be at risk. So the stakes can be high when we talk about getting our assets discovered. Institutions are now creating policies that lay out expectations for discovery and reuse of digital assets. And these types of policies and the measurable goals that go with them, it's intended to justify the work that we do. So we want to help the administrators and decision makers at our institutions and organizations. We want to help them support our budgets and support the work that we do. Policies are referencing a number of different metrics or criteria. The most common that I see is Google Analytics. It can track the number of views for each digital object because each digital object in Islandora has a unique URL. You can track number of views using Google Analytics. A really common one is altmetric, and this is to track the number of downloads of a digital asset. So this is common in the scholarly publication space or the institutional repository space, where you may make the full text PDF available for download. So altmetric is a tool that some institutions use to track downloads. This bottom here is from a site called Webometrics. It's a repository ranking site, and it will rank repositories internationally per continent and by country. And so I'll just go to their site very quickly. This is the repository ranking for Canada. There are a number of Islandora sites on this list. I actually delivered a similar presentation on discovery last week during an Islandora camp. It was in Colorado. And there were some really interesting opinions on this repository ranking system. So institutions, their policies reference Webometrics. They want their repository to be ranked in the top 100, top 20, top 10, what have you. And other libraries or library consortia are completely ignoring this type of ranking system. They say that the criteria for ranking is flawed, that it's not something that they're going to pay a whole lot of attention to. So really interesting conversations happening on repository ranking right now. I know this particular service from Webometrics has been available since 2009. And if you have an opinion on repository ranking or these types of measurable metrics, please let us know. We're on Twitter, and I'll put up our Twitter handle on the last slide here. So really interested to hear what you guys think and how these types of repository ranking systems are impacting your institution. Metrics for discoverability, they can all boil down to our digital assets have to be exposed first for discovery. And we're really lucky that Islandora has tools, some really easy to use tools that will help us do that. To get into the specifics of those tools, let's talk first about a couple of use cases. So the City of Western Sydney launched their institutional repository in August. It's called Research Direct, and we worked with them in the last year to get this repository up and running. That making sure that their thesis and dissertation works, their scholarly publications, making them searchable and accessible to the global community is at the core of their mission. So they want to break down the geographic barriers to accessing their research output. Also very important to them is that it's open access compliant, and the assets here can be harvested by major search engines. So they're thinking about Google Scholar and also a system called Trove. It's an Australian database for research outputs. So since their launch, they've decided to work on a project to ensure that they are turning up in Google Scholar, so they're actively working on that right now. A great example is from the University of Prince Edward Island. Many of you may know that Islandora was born at the University of Prince Edward Island, thus the name. And so they've really been pioneers in the way that digital assets in Islandora can be discovered. So they say that the discoverability of their assets in their institutional repository is also supporting the core values of the institution at large. So they say that the institutional repository is supporting both the research strategic plan for the university and the Senate open access policy. So really, discovery is getting to the heart of the mission of these universities and institutions. The Island Scholar site, this one here on the screen, it actually ranks quite well on the Canadian repositories list for webometrics. It's number 19. And I spoke to a librarian at UPEI last week. His name's Donald Moses. He's very active on the the Islandora Google groups. He's one of the founders of the Islandora project. And he says the university library did take on a specific project to ensure that the Islandora assets in this institutional repository were discoverable in Google Scholar, that they could be harvested using OAI PMH, and also that they could be exposed using RSS. So now that we've heard a couple of examples from production-ready repositories out there, you'd be asking yourself, okay, that's great for them, but how do I get started? And I think attending this webinar is a great first step because we're going to help you understand the metrics and what matters most. We all have limited time and limited resources, so we need to know where we should focus our time and energy so that we can get the most out of our time and effort. We're going to go through some standard modules in the latest version of Islandora that will help you on your way. The really important thing to remember, if this is an intimidating or overwhelming step for you, that any site administrator can enable and configure these modules. You do not need to be a developer or have technical skills to get started down this path. So I'm going to be showing you the interfaces where you do enable and configure these tools. And I'm going to be showing you both on the Islandora sandbox and on the Discovery Garden sandbox. So I'm hoping that you can follow along. And if you want to use this recording to help you do this later on as well, that will be available to you as well. So let's start with sitemap. Islandora does have an XML sitemap module, but let's take a step back first. Some of you may not know exactly what an XML sitemap is. On Wikipedia, and I have this handy quote here, and it says, it tells the search engine about pages in a site, their relative importance to each other, and how often they're updated. And visitors and search engine bots find pages on your site. That's very simply what an XML sitemap is. The Islandora XML sitemap module creates these maps for your repository. Does so by adding URLs for each Islandora object to the database as custom links. The XML sitemap is created, it adds those custom links to it. So we're going to go to the Islandora sandbox, so it's available from islandora.ca, and we're just going to look at the configuration interface for this module. And I have some links here to documentation and to GitHub as well. So let's to the sandbox. And here's it out of here so you know how to get here right from the beginning. So the Islandora sandbox, to do any of these configurations, you do need to log in to be an authenticated user. And what you do is you log in with the credentials. They're here on the front page. So the username is admin. The password is Islandora, all lowercase. And it's the same username and password on the Discovery Garden sandbox that I'm going to show you in a moment. So once you're logged in as an administrator, you will be able to see this menu up here on the top. It has a black background. And most of the configuration, you're going to click on the Islandora button here to that you need. The menus is long. If you scroll right down to the bottom, there's an XML sitemap integration link, and we just click that. So you can see this interface is really quite simple. All you need to do is make sure that we have a last modified solar field configured. This is a really standard configuration. If you went on here and copied it from the Islandora sandbox, you could paste it right into your own installation. And then you set the maximum number of Islandora links to process at once, and 1,000 is the setting here. That's also something that you can copy and paste. At the bottom, there are a number of different options. The option to generate remaining entries. This would be applicable if you had already created the entries, the URLs for each object, and then you do a new migration. Maybe you added new content, and you just want to create those custom URLs, newly added or newly migrated content. So that's where this option is applicable. You also have the option to regenerate all Islandora entries. So that's essentially redoing sitemap. You can save configuration. That's if you would change the configuration on either of these two fields. You can also reset the configuration to the default. So the XML sitemap configuration is as easy as this. You just have to fill in these two fields and then generate the entries for each Islandora object. I know that there are people out there who would actually enjoy manually creating their sitemap. I'm not one of them. So this is a really easy way to make sure that each Islandora asset that has its own Islandora URL, because the persistent identifier is present in the URL for all objects in Islandora. It means that these are discoverable. They're exposed for search sites like Google and Bing. Back to our slides and move on. The next, search engine optimization, also known as SEO. And SEO is something you could take entire courses on. We're going to go over it very briefly, just in the context of Islandora Scholar. So for those of you who aren't familiar with SEO, it's a process of affecting the visibility of a website or a web page in a search's natural or unpaid search results. It can target different kinds of search, including academic search. And a good example of an academic search is Google Scholar. Of course, there are many other examples as well that are proprietary. So Aura does have a specific setting for making scholarly publications exposed in Google Scholar through the suite of modules that we released in May. It was released to the community in May in, I guess it was Islandora version 7.1.3. And it's called Islandora Scholar. It's a suite of modules that are used to express scholarly communications like in an institutional repository. So what it does is it creates meta tags and adds those meta tags to a citation object. And a citation is just a content model for a scholarly publication like a thesis or dissertation. And those meta tags can be crawled by Google bots. And these tags are also recognized by Zotero. So we're going to go to the Discovery Garden sandbox this time. Out of here. So for those of you who have never logged into the Islandora sandbox, there is a login link in the footer. And like I said, the credentials are admin. The username is admin. The password is Islandora, all lowercase. I'm already logged in here, so you can see the administrative menu here at the top with the black background. Because the configuration for Google Scholar is in the Islandora Scholar menu, you need to go first to the Islandora menu. So I'll click this button up here, Islandora, and click on Solution Pack Configuration. Next, you click the Scholar link. That there is a section for Google Scholar search configuration. It's as easy as checking the box that says render Google Scholar search link. Then you have to configure a primary search XPath and a default search XPath. These are the types of settings that you can and paste from our configuration, or you can make them your own. If this is something that you're doing for the first time, it's possible for you to log on to our sandbox, follow the steps that I just went through, and just copy from here and paste onto your own installation if you're doing this for the first time. And make information available to Google or Google Scholar. It's exposed, but sometimes it does take a little while for those Google bots to get around to your site. So you can expect to have your content indexed within a month or two of making it exposed. Note the OAI PMH modules in Islandora. So for those of you who don't know, OAI PMH is the Open Access Initiative protocol for metadata harvesting. So it's a real mouthful. And what that means is it's a set of protocols to expose structured metadata harvesters. So Islandora is OAI PMH compliant, and it has been approved when submitted to WorldCat. RuBot++ in parentheses there is just a shout out to one of the Islandora community members in Ontario, Canada. His name is Nick Rouet, and he works at York University in Toronto. I'm going to show you an example of York University's content in WorldCat in just a few slides. So the OAI module, it's been written so that each part of the handler can be overwritten for custom implementations. So for the average Islandora implementation, this isn't going to matter, but I'm going to explain an instance where it does matter, a custom implementation in this next slide. A custom implementation, a really good example is the University of South Carolina. They have a wonderful film archive, and it's called MERC-DR. There is a link to it in the bottom right-hand corner of this slide. And so the video content model for the University of South Carolina, or USC, is a little bit different than the average. They have these really big film assets, and they decided to have a tiered approach to content modeling for their installation. They have, for each film, a presentation master, and it has PB core description document attached to it as a data stream, and then that is mapped to DC for harvesting. They also have mezzanine and AX objects of the same film. And the metadata on those assets are PB core instantiation documents, which are more technical metadata. That means for each asset, there would be 3 possible records that could be harvested. So we wrote the Islandora OAI module so that we could overwrite the handler so that only one of those would actually be harvested. USC requested that the preservation master metadata, the description doc, be harvested instead of the PB core information associated to the mezzanine access objects. So that's just a really quick example of a custom implementation. So the configuration of the Islandora OAI module. Because it does take a couple of steps, and it may be something that you haven't encountered before. So I'm going to go back to the Islandora, the Discovery Garden sandbox to show you around. So we'll get out of here and start back at the beginning. So to get to the Islandora OAI interface for configuration, we click the Islandora button. We click the Islandora Utility Modules link. Islandora OAI. See here, there are a number of fields that you can configure. These are fairly straightforward and are the same here as they are on the Islandora sandbox. So if you are starting out, it's very possible for you to log in and copy and paste these configuration settings from our sandbox onto your own site. To take a look at the configuration for the handler, the OAI request handler. Here, this is where we define how sets or collections are defined. There are a number of configuration options. Right top here are the most important. And this is how we're defining sets. We want to make sure that sets are defined per collection. The last really important configuration option for OAI PMH in Islandora is to make sure that any access restrictions you have applied to your digital assets will be affected by the OAI PMH module and tools here. So I guess the use case is if you've chosen to have a collection of assets or a particular asset dark and not available to the public, you also don't want that content to be harvested and discoverable through services like WorldCat. So we have to go to a separate configuration interface to check this out. Go back to the main Islandora menu, Islandora Utility Modules, but this time I'm going to click on Islandora XACML. For those of you who don't know what XACML is, it's a security protocol. It's a way that you can apply a security policy to a digital asset. So XACML policy can restrict access to a collection or a PDF or a video or what have you. It pulls in Drupal's users, roles, and permissions so that you can have certain users access digital content while other users cannot. So in this interface, you want to make sure that the Save Relationships box is checked. That we also want to have the role and user of the XACML policies be respected. So if WorldCat is harvesting my repository, they're technically unauthenticated on my site. And so they should only be able to harvest the type of content that is available to unauthenticated or general users. So this is the type of configuration that you can copy and paste from our site as well and configure on your own. On this side, I've listed some tests that we've done on our sandbox to ensure that our configurations are working. But these tests can also be run on your own installations. Anything after the links, anything after the / on these links, it can be used as a sample request when applied to your own installation. So you can take a look at these links. Some of them are more interesting than others, just based on the type of content we have available on our sandbox. But once you have your own site configured for OAI, these are the exact kind of tests that you can do to ensure that your configuration is working. Is the example I was telling you about, and I actually will go to the site. I mentioned that York University is making their Islandora digital assets available through WorldCat, and so you can follow this link here to see some of those assets. You see that the thumbnail and the title and descriptive metadata are all being transferred into WorldCat for discovery. I know during the first iterations of this process, the thumbnail was being left out. So Nick Rouet at York University and a few other Islandora community members have been working on this to make sure that those assets are harvested and are accessible, and they had great success. Request that we've recently heard a little bit about was, is it possible to harvest to Omeka using Islandora OAI? Yes, that is true, because Omeka does have an OAI PMH harvester plugin. And it's not, the documentation is on the web. You can take a look at it. It will harvest the DC from your Islandora installation. I haven't used it personally, but it does look like an option for people who would like to integrate with Omeka. So some institutions, they've used Omeka for a long time. Their users are comfortable with it, so it can be used in conjunction with Islandora. However, I have heard from Islandora community members that a different method is a bit more popular. People are choosing to use what's called the Omeka Fedora connector. And so that connects with the Fedora element of your Islandora installation. And I'll just go briefly to that site. And just a page on the omeka.org website that explains the Fedora connector. And we've heard from the University of Toronto that they are planning to do this type of integration with Omeka and their Islandora installation. The librarian there, her name is Kelly Babcock. She's actually planning on giving a presentation to a local library group in November on this very topic. So I'm looking forward to hearing from Kelly on their plans to use this connector and what impact that's going to have on their user base. Planning, if any of the attendees here are planning on using Omeka in conjunction with Islandora, I'd be very interested to hear your use cases, your requirements, and to see what you guys are planning on doing about it. So the webinar content, for more information on any of these tools, or if you'd like a private meeting to talk about any Islandora functionality, you can contact me on email or on Twitter. So our Twitter handle is @DiscGarden, and the email is erin@discoverygarden.ca. You can reach me through info@discoverygarden.ca. At this point, we'll open up the floor for questions. I'm wondering, is discovery a priority for you in your digital repository content? What have you used in the past to expose digital content for discovery? Participants saying that at their institution, they're meeting to discuss the implementation of Omeka, and they're going to keep us posted. That sounds really good, Mike. And on Omeka Webometrics, using certain discovery services to expose content. It'll have a shy group. Okay. So the event here says that in Google Scholar, in Summon, and Canada, there is a need to harvest. Okay, good. So it means that institutions are going beyond WorldCat and Primo using Summon, also Google Scholar and Library and Archives Canada. So the Islandora OAI module will help expose your content for all of those services. And another is saying that they're Ex Libris Primo. So I don't have use cases like production-ready use cases where we've submitted or have been harvested by Primo and Summon. This would be a really interesting discussion for the Islandora Google groups, just see who has done it, what kind of experience they've had. And for any of you who are new to the Islandora community, the Islandora Google groups are terrific. And I'll go to them now so you have the link so that we can continue this conversation online. Have hundreds of users, and it's posted to about 200 to 300 times per month. So post the link to the Google Groups in the chat window so you all have it. We have participants saying that as far as sharing metadata, they've exposed metadata to Summon and want to harvest. planning on using the Islandora OAI module once they go into production. And the question is, does the OAI PMH endpoint provide ETDMS compatible documents out of the box or with a solution pack, or something you have to build? The question is a great one. The University of Prince Edward Island, they did expose both DC and ETDMS. I'm uncertain if it's available in the standard configuration, but we'll ask Donald Moses at UPEI just to confirm that. So Kevin, I can get back to you privately on that. Or actually, it might be something that's interesting to the whole group. I'll send that answer back when I send out the recording of this webinar later this afternoon. Experiences from participants? Short and sweet today. Thank you so much for being a part of the webinar, and please let me know if you have any questions. We love to go on these conversations, like I mentioned, on Twitter or on the Islandora Google groups. So I look forward to hearing from you again soon. And until the next webinar next month, have a great day and have a great week and have a great month. Okay, take care, guys.